Alright everybody, hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Rachel and I am a musician from Minnesota. I'm primarily a pianist and I've played for about 15 years, I think. And in today's video, I'm going to be talking about how much I practiced in 2020. It's a little weird to be revealing my practice calendar on the internet, but I'm also very excited. So just a really quick little thing about me is that I went to college for music and I graduated last year. Shout out to all my pandemic graduates out there. So the reason that I bring those things up is because my main perspective to offer to you guys in this video is the fact that I am a musician, but music is not my full-time job at this moment in time. And I want to paint a realistic picture as to what my craft and what my practice calendar looks like as a result of that. I just wanted to make it clear that I am by no means this professional pianist, like concert pianist at all. So just keep those things in mind as I walk you through my practice calendar. So that's about it for my intro, and let's get into the video. So the first thing that I needed to do was comb through every practice calendar individually and start writing out how much I practiced that month and then adding it all up. Luckily, I had already written my total monthly practice at the bottom of each calendar at the end of the month, so it made this task a little bit easier. I just made a really simple document in Procreate to kind of visually look at all the numbers before I added everything up. After I added everything up, I did a deep dive into the times that I wasn't practicing, and in 2020, there were a few times when I would go a couple weeks without practicing, which I definitely will talk about in a minute. Alright, I have everything in this very simple Procreate document right here, and after I added everything up, the total amount of practice in 2020 came out to 140 hours and 35 minutes. How do I feel about that? So my initial reaction is that I'm a little bit disappointed that I didn't hit 150 hours, because when I was going through all the calendars from last year, I definitely could have found 10 extra hours to practice. And so I was a little bit disappointed about that. However, there are many factors that kind of go into a practice schedule, as musicians understand. I mean, I still practiced 140 hours and 35 minutes, and that's pretty good, you know? That's not a bad amount, especially for somebody who is quite busy as I am. I definitely think that that's a number to be proud of. I definitely know that I could have done better, and I definitely had some months where I was definitely not practicing a lot and didn't spend a lot of time at the piano. Definitely want to talk about why that is though, and so let's kind of open up those calendars and see what we find. So now I'm just going to be really conversational about my practice calendar in the year and kind of what influenced how much or how little I practiced in a certain month. So in January I practiced 11 hours and 15 minutes total, which I think normally is not very good for practice, especially because at the time in January 2020 I was still in college, and so normally I would not think that that's a good amount for me to be practicing in a month, but I was prepping for my voice recital. My voice recital was in February, and so I had a lot of rehearsal and a lot of music to get under my belt, and that was a way bigger priority to do well on that than to just be practicing piano, because I didn't have a recital to prep for. So the 11 hours and 15 minutes total definitely makes sense. Alright, so then I practiced more in February. I ended up practicing a total of 14 hours and 20 minutes that month. That's a pretty good score, honestly, because I actually did my voice recital at the beginning of that month, and so I was still heavily prepping for that recital, and then I finished out the rest of the month pretty strong, all things considered, but I was very sick in the middle of February, so I didn't practice for a few days in there. But I was starting to prep for my theory composition recital that was supposed to be in May, which never happened because of COVID. Alright, and that brings us to March 2020. Okay, so March was kind of when I first started YouTube, officially. I said to myself that I wanted to start making videos more regularly, and That was when I posted my piano performance at the Gonda building in Rochester, and I'm really proud of that video. I love that video a lot, and it's actually really special to me because that was like my last normal moment before all hell broke loose and we went into lockdown and COVID kind of took America by storm and all that stuff. I filmed that over spring break, and I definitely did take a little bit of a break over that week, and I was still prepping pretty heavily for my theory composition recital, so that took precedence, but I still ended up practicing 14 hours total in March. It was a weird month, to say the least, and I still ended up somehow coming up with 14 hours. As if March could be outdone, April was also very, very weird, and this was actually one of my worst months for practice, and I started out really strong because I feel like everybody went through the same story where we went into this massive lockdown and we were all like, oh my god, we have so much time to do everything we want to do now and this is gonna be great, and then after like a week and a half we were all in like this massive quarantine depression, and I was totally on that train as well. Like, I was excited to have all this time to work on my recital, and I was like, great, this is gonna be great, and then just like, look at all those X's. COVID-19 depression is real, guys. It's so real, look at that. Yeah. Only ended up practicing 5 hours and 15 minutes in April. And also, side note, I actually ended up moving. I was displaced because of COVID, so I came home, and that was also a big change, and I'll take the 5 hours and 15 minutes. That is fine with me. I definitely bounced back a little bit in May. So in May 2020, I practiced a total of 10 hours and 45 minutes. I graduated college that month. I started working full-time. 10 hours and 45 minutes really isn't all that bad. Okay, and then June was actually really good, and I am actually really proud of myself because I practiced 15 hours total in the month of June, and I was working so much. That was when I started nannying full-time at the end of May and then into June, and so I was nannying like 50 hours a week. I was so busy, and I still found 15 hours to practice, so that's really awesome, and I'm super proud of that. Okay, so then in July, I definitely didn't have a very good month. It was worse than April. I practiced 4 hours and 30 minutes total. There was just a couple weeks in there where I didn't practice at all because I still had a lot of like COVID depression going on. You know, we all were going through a lot last year. We're all still going through a lot, if I'm being honest, and it's understandable. I definitely wish I could have practiced a little bit more that month, but it totally makes sense. COVID-19 depression is real, it's real. And I was also dealing with a very, very heavy work schedule. I was working crazy amounts of hours and like 50 hours plus a week. So halfway through the year, I'm actually pretty impressed with how I'm doing, all things considered, and I'm not like really upset about it at all. So then August actually ended up being my worst month. This was my August practice calendar, so it is a whole lot of nothing. That's great. I think what happened with August is it was just kind of a continuation of what I felt in July. Working a shit ton of hours, and when I did have free time, I either wanted to just sleep or rest because I was so tired, and also more COVID depression. I'm definitely like, you know, not happy that I went a whole month without practicing, but it's also like quite understandable. It is what it is. So then in September, I actually had September was my comeback month. Like, I literally practiced 24 hours into September, just an absolute killer month. I was starting a new job, and so that was crazy, and I still found 24 hours to practice. All right, so then in October, I practiced a total of 7 hours, and I think I could have done a lot better in October. I was just adjusting to a new work schedule, a new job, kind of more COVID depression. Like, see, I had like a couple weeks where just literally nothing for 2 weeks. The theme of this video is that COVID-19 depression is real. So November actually was not that much better for me. I only practiced 7.5 hours. Really early on in the month, my Nana died, and then that was obviously a whole nother funeral and wake and burial service that we had to go through. Definitely impacted my practice schedule, which is totally fine, but then it kind of set a bad pace for the rest of the month, and I think that I just kind of struggled to get back on the wagon. I guess the good thing though is that I ended up with an amazing December for practice. On the first day of the month, I just decided that I wanted to try the 100 days of practice challenge, which is basically where you practice 100 days in a row, and I had never done anything like that before, and I was was actually really excited to start it just to see if I could do it and challenge myself. And I'm only about a third of the way through the challenge, so I still have a long ways to go, but I practiced every day that month, and I rounded out the year with practicing a total of 27 hours in December, which is crazy. That was an awesome month for me. I was so proud of myself. Really happy with how I ended the year on a really strong note. So yeah, that's kind of my recap as to how I did for the whole year and how everything played out for me and how my life factors impacted my practice schedule. And I think it's really interesting to do this reflection exercise, not only to kind of show people like the behind the scenes of being a musician, if you're not a musician, or if you're trying to just adopt a better practice schedule and it's hard because you're now a full-time adult like I am. I'm actually like really proud of myself for the work that I did put in, because I think that I really did hold myself accountable in terms of my practice and my craft. That was really important to me, especially post-college, because it is a lot harder to practice when you get out of college and no one is telling you to practice anymore. And so the fact that I found things to work on and set goals for myself and things that I wanted to do, I think is really awesome. And that was still enjoyable for me. Like, it didn't feel like a chore, and so that's good. Obviously, practice is not always fun, as musicians know, and so there was definitely times where I had to kind of like tell myself like, this is good for you, you need to do this. And it's actually really interesting because I'm already really excited to do this same video again in a year and recap my 2021 progress, because I already feel like I'm gonna have a way better year, and one of my goals is to log more than 200 practice hours total this year, which I genuinely think that I can do. I'm actually really excited, and I think that that is a realistic goal for me to set. I'm just really excited to, you know, have a good year and to set these goals for myself now so that I can, you know, look back and see how far I've come, and that's a really cool feeling, I guess. And so the year definitely was subpar, to say the least. At the end of the year, I still found myself being like, wow, I still got a lot better this year. I still put a lot of work in despite everything we were going through. And I think that that is my main takeaway. So that's all I have for you guys today, and I am really grateful that you watched this video. If you found this video helpful or engaging, inspiring, supportive in any way, consider subscribing to my channel. I really appreciate it. Give me a like, or even leave a comment if you're feeling spicy, whatever. It really does help support my channel, so I really appreciate it, and thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!